we take the conversation further during Lagos Talks 91, which follows immediately after Freshly Pressed at 8:10 a.m., where we open the phone lines so you can discuss the stories further. All right, Devo, Sanwo-Olu signs 2021 amended criminal justice law. Punch newspaper. This was announced yesterday by the State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Moyosori Onibanjo, SAN, in a statement titled Governor Babajide Shola Sanwo-Olu signs Administration of Criminal Justice Amendment Law of Lagos State 2021. Some of the main highlights of this law is the provision of the conducting criminal proceedings through audio and video conferencing platforms, powers of chief magistrate to visit police stations, and a few others. I think, but the big one is the prohibition of media parade of suspects, I think. All right, let's go on. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it.
Yes, it is a new, well, let's call it a reform of the judicial reforms within Lagos State. As we know, Lagos State has been at the forefront of judicial advancement within the country. Point of note, when the Vice President himself, Osibanjo, was the Attorney General in Lagos,
Yeah.
in the Tinubu administration, he implemented a lot of reforms which many enjoying today. And then, as well as the then governor, now Minister of State for Minister for Power, that's Fashola. So, in this same stead, the growth has continued. The state governor, someone who did sign this on the 21st, sorry, he signed it as of the 30th of September. That's the Administration of Criminal Justice and Law of Lagos State 2021. It's an amendment, right? Now, um, I'll highlight some of the aspects that were mentioned. That's where some of the reforms came in. One, conducting criminal proceedings through audio and video conferencing platforms. That's like using of Zoom.
Yeah.
Also, powers of the chief magistrate to visit the police stations, the prohibition of a media parade of suspects, compensation for victims of crime, protective measures for victims and witnesses as well, um, establishment of a crime data register, and a criminal justice sector reform committee to monitor the implementation of this law. Now, that last bit, that's the monitoring the implementation, is actually the most important. Why
Yeah.
so? Because it's easy to sign in policy.
Yes.
It's easy to say this is what we're going to do, or this is how we want to do it. However, the administration, the implementation, or for the lack of a better word, the execution of this new amended law is where the devil will hide behind the lines.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, sometimes many people, when they're apprehended by the law, or they get caught up in one thing or the other,
Yeah.
you start to wonder, why is it this slow, or what's going on, simply because some aspects of the law have not been implemented. Two, it's also giving rights where it should be
Yeah.
granted. Let me take, for example, let me just dig into one of the online streaming of proceedings, which is basically, if you remember, this came on board during the lockdown,
Yes.
when the courts were closed as well as most government institutions.
Mm-hmm.
At that point in time, it was like, well, the country can't just shut down as a whole. Already, we've always had a backlog of cases. One, two, because we don't, the manpower within the judiciary is not as high. So it looked like we were running into literally a disaster for the criminal justice system. So during the pandemic, there were attempts to use online video conferencing to be able to conduct some of these proceedings. And what that meant, as usual, with all the advantages, the both sides, the defendant and the plaintiff, as well as the judge, could stay within, I don't want to call it the comfort of the home. Let's just say that they could stay within separate locations, yet the authenticity and the weight that a trial requires could be carried on. Now, this efficiency would definitely speed up, accelerate many of the backlogs that have been waiting to reduce. Remember, I think it's either 44,000 or 4,000 awaiting trial cases that we have even in just Lagos State, meaning there's so many people under detention, those locked up simply on the basis of we're awaiting trial.
Yeah.
And sometimes their case shouldn't really take so long, yet they've been held up under some form of detention. So I really feel that this will greatly help the efficiency of the judicial system in Lagos. Secondly,
Absolutely.
the media parade of suspects. You know, here we normally do you are guilty before you're guilty first, and then you
Before
have to.
proven innocent.
Yes, and that is engendered with this practice of before any trial has taken place or conviction or a sentence, the police or the enforcement usually parade suspects. So at that point, you're not too sure that the trial would either free them or convict them. So it's actually prejudice or prejudicial to actually parade them that, oh, these were the people involved, placed the gallery of public opinion. Lastly, I would state.
Sorry, before you go to the last point, how do you
Okay.
think this would be enforced? Because the governor does not have control of the police,
Yes.
right? And it's the police that would often do the parading. How would this be enforced? Would the police then have to obey the laws of the states that they're operating in, or would they still take orders from above? And if it's their practice to do so, would they continue?
Well, the police also work hand in hand with the Attorney General,
Okay.
who represents the judiciary, and the police act as enforcement. So, through this committee, I'm sure the Attorney General will empower the committee members to look at ways that they'll evaluate, train up many of the enforcement personnel within the police within the state to implement these new enhanced laws. Okay.
All right.
I guess as a people, it's also good that we know this so that we begin to look out
True.
that now that it's been signed in, are they still parading suspects? Are people getting their rights enshrined
Yes.
at the end of the day?
Thank you very much. We move on to the president seeking to increase 2022 budget to 16.4 trillion naira. The president is seeking to increase to this amount from 13.98 trillion naira. Health workers are to get 50 billion naira for hazard allowance in terms of the new expenditures. Now, his plans were contained in a letter to the Senate president. And what he said is that it's in line with the newly enacted Petroleum Industry Act. That's why we're seeing this increase. And then this report in the Premium Times details some of what the additional provision would be used for. Please take us to the story, Debo.
Okay, the president, that's Major General Buhari, retired, has sent a letter in to the Senate asking for an increment, okay, which was read out by the Deputy Senate President, Omoyele Gege. Right, and he's seeking an approval, an amendment on the 2022 budget, which was reformed by the MTEF, which was just passed recently. That's the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy paper. All right. Now, basically, he's trying to address government-owned enterprises and funding capital for them, as well as project loans. Now, the 2022 budget, because these days they intend to have the budget out before the year ends. All right, and they had projected about let's say about 14 trillion. Now, with this letter coming from the president, it will top it up by almost about 2.5 trillion to about 16.5. Right. Now, now what is he looking at under the government-owned enterprises? About 100 billion for top up for INEC to carry out the 2023 elections. About 500 billion service-wise votes. Extra about 300 billion for poverty reduction, in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, about 50 billion for the police operations, 50 billion for hazard allowance for health workers. So here we see what the health workers have been going on strike for. It's coming into the budget, so I need people to take notes of this.
Yes.
About 80 billion for wage adjustment. It's not every parastatus that has seen the payment of the wage adjustment. Remember, there was consequential adjustment for the 30,000 wage increase. Then about 37 billion for MDA's electrical bill debt. It's funny to read this, but the truth is many of the government-owned institutions have not been paying their discos. NEPA had always had this issue way back, PHC, and many people wondered how this would be.
Yeah.
So the debt has accumulated, and sometimes whenever they're having the the debates, they normally say that if government ever paid up on its debt, they would have enough to be able to deliver on their expectations. So here you see about 37 billion being slated for MDAs, ministries, departments, and
And
agencies.
agencies.
Now, on the project loan side, about 1.7 trillion was earmarked for TED fund, government-owned enterprise capital, multilateral loan, counterpart funding. You know, some of these loans that we ask for just to provide money to be able to push our budget. There's an aspect that we pay as a local contributor. Now, also about 178 billion for a population and housing census to take place in 2022. Now, the truth is, we can continue reading the plans, and basically, in layman's language, this simply means I want this, I want that. Nigerian people want this, Nigerian people want that. Those are the wishes and the desires, which is delivered by way of budget. But our challenge, as always, and we can't forget to address it, is the revenue challenge. And when I say revenue challenge, this revenue challenge is also undercut by the debt challenge, whereby till date, for every 100 naira we make, about 95, and I'm being conservative here, 95 is used in debt servicing, which leaves very little for the government to use to implement their budget, which is why most times you see them requesting for loans. And the question would be that how come we're living beyond our pocket size? We need to scale down. We need to cut ourselves down. It's a fiscal issue. CBN monetary policy can only go so far, but at the end of the day, hopefully, if our borrowings actually go directly to productive sectors of the economy, maybe we may be able to deliver some of the aspirations and the mandates of this administration.
All right, thank you very much. Dan Okuda from Igando says, good morning. As beautiful as the amended law may be, the major challenge is implementation. Most of the wonderful innovations in the principal law have not been implemented. Good, there is now an implementation committee in the amended law. But thank you very much indeed, Barrister Dan Okuda. All right, let's go on to this next story. Before I say the headline, let me just remind us that yesterday was World Teachers Day. And teachers all around the world were celebrated, honored. And back home, we heard some state governors who had done, I know the Ogun State governor had given some cars, gifts to some teachers, principals were rewarded, parents, many innovative and interesting activities to celebrate teachers, oftentimes unsung heroes. And now from the Guardian newspaper, it's quite disappointing to see one day after teachers threaten strike over minimum wage. The Nigeria Union of Teachers has deplored the non-payment of the basic salary by some state governments since the National Minimum Wage Act was signed into law in 2018. It warned that members nationwide would be directed to withdraw their services if the issues were not or are not urgently addressed. In remarks to mark the 2021 World Teachers Day, the body's national president, Dr. Nasser Idris, stressed that following the COVID-19 pandemic, teachers needed to be adequately empowered for effectiveness. I don't think Dr. Idris had to remind us that teachers ought to be adequately empowered. It's unfortunate that he had to state the obvious. Some parents had the opportunity to act as teachers during the pandemic, and I know they were very willing to hand their wards or their children back to school when school opened, because they saw just how tasking it could be to train up children. We have our teachers in our nation, and this has been for a while now in terms of their remuneration, in terms of their allowances and benefits. And now we see that they're threatening to go on strike. What do you make of this, please?
I'm not surprised, because generally all sectors of our economy and social welfare have gone almost the doldrums, okay? And this is just one section of the educational sector, crying out loud. They use their global data, as the World Teachers Day that was yesterday, to enunciate this and bring it to the forefront. Now, they said they would be going on strike, or they would be dropping tools if many of the state governments that have implemented the implementation of the National Minimum Wage Act, which was signed in 2018. And just like in the last one, we spoke about how the adjustment, consequential adjustment for federal government workers Now, in this condition here, teachers haven't been paid their correct wages, and I don't want to call it new wages because this is still since 2018, right? Now, in saying this, he was like, well, they might have to drop tools at a certain point in time. Now, he was telling people as he was speaking to the Lagos state government, and he charged them also that they should fill up the 35,000 vacancies available in the teaching profession in Lagos State. I mean, that is just a staggering figure that they're actually, we like to say that there are no jobs. How come there are 35,000 vacancies in teaching in Lagos State alone? What really is going on in the educational system in Lagos State as regards primary and secondary education? Now, they also stressed on improving school security. As we know, this had been the bane of education in the country at the moment with the incessant kidnappings and abductions, which Lagos State have also had one or two instances in the past. Now, also he mentioned about the retirement entitlements, whereby a principal till date still collects 20,000 naira for retirement benefits in 2021. Really, 20,000 naira. What's that going to buy him as a retiree? Where is that going to take him? Is he even able to take care of himself? Talk less of family. Now we know that education as a whole in the nation has been a neglected child. We're far from our ratios in terms of meeting global standard, in terms of funding. One, two, we're far, or I don't even say far, I'll say collapsed in terms of our implementation in our public schools to the extent that most people, when I say most, I'm referring to elites, have their children in private schools. I mean, whereas we all grew up in public schools, and now public schools are not just questionable, they're in a sorry state. So it's really, really, really like every other sector, like health, like transport, like aviation, like entertainment, we need to bring the importance and the vitality of the teaching profession to the fore and ensure that we fix policies to be able to address this.
Brilliant. Abayami Akarakiri says, good morning, national strike. Isn't this a state issue? Why should teachers already being paid the correct wages join the strike? Why should states that have complied to this new structure suffer? Still on education, Nigerian government to pay students studying education in public universities 75,000 naira per semester. As a way of encouraging more Nigerians to take up career in teaching, the Nigerian government has announced the payment of 75,000 naira per semester for every student of public universities studying education programs. So they're bringing back the bursary for education course. Ivo, what do you make of this?
Well, one would say this should bring gladness to the hearts of Nigerians. However, how did we get here? Like I said, education has suffered, and especially, and what the fallout of this is that many students are not applying to become teachers. We know how education teachers have literally been neglected and forgotten in our society, to the extent that we have a statement that a teacher gets his reward in heaven. I mean, that's the most callous and wicked proverb to exist, simply because we have underperformed or we haven't given them their right due. In other climes, teachers are highly regarded because they're the ones that put in the proper not just knowledge, but also they empower people to be able to be productive in their lives. So why should those who empower others to be able to be productive in their lives get the short, not even the short, the last speck on the stick? Now, this move by the federal government was saying that it would introduce 75,000 per semester for every student of public universities studying educational programs. Okay, so those who are looking at B education, B science and education, they will be getting about 75,000 per semester, and those in National Colleges of Education, that's the NCE, they will be getting 50,000. So 3 semesters in a year, you're looking at roughly about 220,000 thereabouts. But the point is, this is a good move, but I don't know whether it's sufficient to be able to drive people back to that line, because it's one thing to get educated to be a functional teacher. It's another thing to come out into a system that's literally not functioning.
Yeah.
Will this be extended post their graduation?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ibrahim echoes your thoughts. He's saying, why not channel the 75,000 to actual teachers' welfare? That's the incentive you need for people to study education. This initiative is simply putting the cart before the horse. And just in line with yesterday's celebration of World Teachers' Day, for Lagos Talks 981, we'll probably have a debate on that, a conversation around should the focus of the federal government in terms of pumping money be on bursary, that's why, to attract more people to study, to choose to study education, or perhaps that should be
It's the
welfare.
federal government, not Lagos State.
No, I said Lagos State government. I said the government.
Okay.
All right. So, or welfare, and make the profession more attractive. Let's hear from you at During Lagos Talks 91. Edgar from Ikorodu says, on the 75,000 education bursary, does this not imply hypocrisy of a high sort? Is this not the same government that are not paying teachers allowance? And then Cisco Delgado said, Divo, you said 20,000 naira for pensioners in Lagos State. It may interest you to know that my former company pays 2,500 naira every 3 months as pension. A lot is wrong with Nigeria.
No, for school principals.
School principals. It depends on what you have to tell. You have to give
So
us
obviously, if the principal is earning 20,000, how much would the ordinary retired teacher be getting?
Yes. Some of the opinion that the government wants to start owing the would-be teachers from the schooling years. It's just all talks with no plan. We can't jump into conclusion in that way. I do understand, just like we said with the first story, that it's not just about a plan, it's about implementation. But we'll take this further because I see a number of comments coming in about this. Let's discuss in detail during Lagos Talks 981. Right, so Buhari's speech, according to a member of the House of Representatives, Nigerian lawmakers on Ghana's terror watch list, says House of Representatives member Ben Igbakba from PDP Delta. He said the allegation by President Muhammadu Buhari that a member of the National Assembly is financing a secessionist movement has put Nigerian lawmakers on terror watch list in Ghana. So, Divo, what did the president say, and what do you think about the representatives?
Well, this came in his October 1 speech, where he mentioned that he made allegations that a member of the National Assembly is financing a secessionist movement, which has put Nigerians on the terror watch list in Ghana. All right. Now, one lawmaker, okay, that was Benny Bakwa from PDP Delta State. He did mention that how his experience in Ghana recently when he went to attend a wedding, that the officials held him back at the airport for about 4 hours, asking him to hold on. And by the time they met him, they told him that they heard that there was a statement coming from Nigeria, from the president, that some members of parliament were sponsoring terrorism. And therefore, they went ahead and put more or less a watch out or surveillance on any member of parliament that comes into town. As you know, parliament members do carry diplomatic passports. Now, he did say that Buhari's failure to name the alleged financer, meaning take away the suspicion or the speculation, has placed the 469 members of the National Assembly as prime suspects. So he was asking the leaders of the House to liaise with the leadership of the Senate to meet with the president on this matter. Somehow, the speaker did say that this should not be debated, but let's see how they go about that. I'm sure usually our president, who doesn't speak, whenever he says something like this, they must know or have information on this matter. But the truth is, you can see how foreign nations do not joke with suspicion, especially when you have narrowed it down like that. And I think it's only clear, and it calls for us not to pray or live in suspicion. The federal government, having known something, at least for a 10-year war, should easily, quickly dispense with names so that we can, because I know they don't have everything.
Yes.
So the few that we have, can we get past it and know that, okay, this is some of the locations or people who have been giving Nigerians sleepless nights and taking their lives for some time now.
So Emma from Akoka said, so he was not informed too. If I understand that lawmaker well, he's reacting to what the president said because it's affected him. Well, he's welcome to the WhatsApp group of the ordinary Nigerians. we will all eat breakfast, he says. Punch, if you want to understand that, that's a new proverb. You need to ask people on the street. Pond says 567 million naira required to hire 1,000 workers for Lagos Ibadan rail operation. The Lagos Ibadan rail line will employ 1,000 additional workers at the cost of that amount I mentioned per annum, according to the managing director of Nigerian Railway Corporation, Mr. Fidel Okiria. Please, Divo, your take on this.
It's just one line. It just simply means they want to expand, operate efficiently, and to be able to employ the extra 1,000, they're going to need money.
Where's the money going to come from? Sorry,
well, like I said, the president was working on raising about 2.5 trillion to address some of these project loans and etc. And the railway comes under some of those projects that the federal government is trying to implement.
Well, at least in this, I see good news. So that's more job opportunities for people in Lagos State. So this is what happens when we invest in infrastructure. It has a ripple effect on the economy and the citizens of the country. So great news right there. Federal government approves zero import duty for vessels.
Yes, that was the last story I wanted to get to. But let me say this. Yes, it's a move to actually attract business so that those who are in the maritime business will know that the federal government is working with them to help their industry. Now, zero import duty means they won't be paying that tax. However, you know, in our economy, it takes a lot to actually bring in a vessel. Some vessels run into about 500 million to almost in excess of billions. So let's hope this is received well by maritime investors.
When does this take effect, Ivo? Is it stated in the article?
No, it's not stated in the article, but they said that the federal government had approved it.
All right, okay, brilliant. All right, thank you very much. And then, okay, so we have time for one more. So we have a number of comments, actually. Let me get through those comments. Shan from Ilukweju says, a few months ago, the NRC reported the huge money made last year. Let them just take the money for this new expansion for that. So that's the Nigeria Railway Corporation. Obiago from Agos says, teaching in Nigeria is quite pathetic. I once earned 13,000 naira last year, and at the height of the pandemic, teachers were on their own. Education sector has collapsed. A summit is needed. And then we have no name here. Please put your name. The number ends with 3270. Kindly put your name so we can read your comments. I will take more comments during Lagos Talks 901. They would want to touch on this last story before we go. That's the IGP, the Inspector General of Police, and the Director General of the Department of State Services have been dragged before the Federal High Court, sitting in Abuja, over alleged unlawful killing and harassment of Shiite members on peaceful religious practice. This news is in the New Telegraph.
Yes, this was over the fracas that took place in Gwaripa in Abuja recently, whereby they went on their usual procession, which, you know, this happens every year. And it seems as if, like I said, the federal government's body language has been pitched at being overly aggressive with this group. Yes, the IMN has been proscribed, but the truth is you can't prescribe the faith, which is the Shiite movement. So one of their members has dragged in some of the enforcement members, that's the IG, the DSS, to court over the alleged killing and harassment. We see this time after time. Like I've said, their freedoms as Nigerians who practice their faith is enshrined in the Constitution. And it would be instructive of this government to actually not use instruments of government to actually harass them. They're all Nigerians at the end of the day. You might not agree with their faith, but they are still Nigerian citizens.
Thank you. It said that the matter is yet to be assigned to a judge. Final comment here from Jide in Traffic saying, for a country that uses about 95% of her revenue servicing debt, how do we plan on paying these teachers? Our only solution to problems is throwing money at them. But the actual problem is that we don't have this money. I am absolutely certain that there are some teachers that are not earning 75,000 naira in this country. I was going to say there are many teachers in all these cosmetic approaches helped us. It is time for us to start facing the actual problems. Yes, obviously, this is a big topic, and like I mentioned, we can take this further during Lagos Talks 981. Thank you, Divo, for joining me this morning to go through the newspaper stories. And a big thanks to our listeners, audience on YouTube, for participating by sending in your comments or just listening. We'll take this further. 8:10, join me and our callers for Lagos Talks 981. I'm Ayo Mairo Ese.
The headlines, the stories.